Hi, I'm Trish Triumpho Sullivan. I'm the proprietor of Downtown Book and Sound, and we're here today with Dr. Joshua Deutsch, who is an author of 10 different children's books. Yes, that's right, 10 different children's books. And he's agreed to join us today to talk a little bit about his books. And we're going to start out I'm going to turn I'm going to turn this in a sec, so don't get seasick, okay? But any child or family that comes today gets a free copy of Maya Loves Beans or A Maya Le Encantan los Frijoles. And that's a special gift from Downtown Book and Sound to any family or child that wants to come in and get a free book. And so let's welcome Dr. Josh today, and he's going to talk to us and tell us a little bit about his books and why he wrote them. So we're going to flip this around. Like I said, don't get seasick. And you should be able to see Dr. Josh there. Let me adjust a little bit there. Let's see. There we go. So thanks for joining us, Dr. Josh. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me, where are you from originally?
I grew up in Oakland, California. I've had a bit of an adventurous and interesting life before becoming a doctor, which has been my journey in life for the past 8 years, both medical school and residency, and now I work as a family physician at New Memorial Hospital. My past 7 years was working in landscape construction and agriculture.
Wow. So what landscape construction and agriculture, you did like landscaping in homes or
yeah,
just...
So it was based out of Oakland, California, and we in Oakland. This is my son Ishan here and my son Jaden, who are on the sides of me. We put in vegetable gardens in people's homes with the idea of promoting.
Gardens.
Yeah, and then we did just a complete landscaping service. Beyond that. And I also traveled for multiple years in Central America doing basic public health projects, agriculture, water chlorination. Hey, Ishan, Daddy's talking. Okay, boy. So due to those experiences, they both connected me with the community here, which is that I serve farm worker families in Greenfield and King City that are two communities primarily composed of farm workers and their families. And I provide medical care for all ages within that community, in the hospital and out of the hospital. And that my experiences living in Central America and also working in farming and landscaping connected me with that community. When I made the decision that I wanted to leave landscaping and go into medicine, it was primarily with the purpose of serving that community in both the medical needs, but also thinking more broadly about the public health and educational needs of wanting to be in a rural community where I could be both a physician, but also a leader in the community to advance the interests of the community as a whole. I have two young children, Jaden and Ishan, who are 3 years old and 6 years old. So as I was going through my medical training, I was also raising two young children, with the requirements of medical training, oftentimes working a 12-hour day, an 80-hour week, sometimes the only relationship that I had with my kids was that I would put them to bed and I'd read books to them before they went to bed. Folks who are listening to this are probably already down with reading, and but beyond, so we're probably already, everyone who's listening is already partial to it. But evidence is overwhelming that reading promotes strong family bonds between parents and children, and also that reading to children advances language development, and is probably the single greatest thing that a parent can do in order to improve children's chances for success in education, their confidence going through school, and their chances of success in life in general. And that a child that is not exposed to book during the 0 to 5 years starts school behind, has difficulties with confidence and language that's very difficult to come back from. A couple examples and that back that up. There was a landmark study by Rice University that found that children living in poverty hear about 1/3 of the words compared to children in professional households, which amounts to a 30 million word gap over the first 4 years of life. It's
Wow.
also known that reading proficiency by the end of 3rd grade is the single greatest predictor of high school graduation rates and career success. So if you're not read to as a child, you start with a language deficit, you aren't able to have success in school, you develop behavior problems as a result, you don't achieve language proficiency by 3rd grade, your chances of graduating high school are very low. It's an uphill climb. And so compared to when you're read to regularly as a kid, you feel confident in school, you're a good reader, you know, it comes easily to you, so that people's chances for success in school and in life are often defined by whether or not their parents can read to them. And I'm in a community where most of the parents are not literate themselves, and the knowledge of the importance of reading is not known. So I wanted to create a program that would serve the interests of having universal literacy and universal reading during the 0 to 5 years. And there were a number of barriers that I saw with the existing programs that are out there. For starters, many of the programs that are out there were just too expensive for local clinics. We want to give away, I mean, I think every doctor that works with a pediatric population, we want to be giving away free books, but they're hard to come by, especially in the communities where reading is at its least, whereas books are in excess in communities where people already have enough books. They don't really need them from their doctors. And so we really had trouble getting books affordably, and the books that we could get for free were often culturally and linguistically inappropriate for our community, where we have a lot of indigenous language speakers who don't have a written language. We have a lot of parents who don't read, and in general, the characters in the books are just not ethnically familiar or culturally familiar. The themes that are covered are not familiar to our patients, and so parents have a hard time with it. So I came up with a reading program that was cheaper than anything else out there. The books are available for free. The idea is for it to be universal reading, targeting farm worker families, many of them including wordless books, so that parents who don't read can narrate them from the pictures to their kids. And we also address a lot of health themes that I'm trying to cover with my patients anyway, and a lot of science themes that are just things that I love because I love science, and I try to make it easy to get young children interested in science. So got going with it, became proficient with the book creation process. We got to 10 books, we launched the program, and now we have 25,000 copies of our books in local clinics that are being given away to kids around Monterey County, and also Solano County is involved. And we're trying to build this as a nationwide program with increased support from the community. We think we can do it.
That's pretty awesome. And that's really exciting. You know, I'm wondering if you would mind holding up some of your books and we can kind of talk about them just a little bit. So we've got.
So this was the first book that I created. It's called Juguemos, or Play. And this is a wordless book about a mom and her son who go to play soccer together. The soccer game is interrupted by a cell phone call, which the mom initially takes and spends a little bit too long on the phone. The boy kind of calls her out on it, and then she wisely decides to end the phone conversation in order to go back to playing with her kid. They have an excellent day. They go home, and you see kind of a strong family relationship modeled. And this book was inspired by going to the park, as many of us do with our kids, and seeing a lot of kids who need their parents' attention, and their parents are there on the phone. And so as a healthcare provider who wants to promote active kids and also active parents, with parents getting more exercise, that cell phones and other electronic distractors are often barriers to us fully engaging with our kids. And that in general, kids who are engaged during outside play will want to continue with outside play. Kids who feel like they're sent outside and then their parents lose interest in them are going to be more likely to not want to leave the house and to continue nagging their parents and not want to engage. So active parents, engaged parents make active kids who grow up with a love for physical activity, a love for exercise and being outdoors. And so this book was a really cool way to send a message to both parents and kids to be active, to be engaged, and for parents to actively engage their kids. Play soccer with your kid, run around and play with your kid. Don't send your kid outside and then just be around your cell phone. So it's a cool story.
That's interesting, because I actually read an article where they talked about that that children should not be exposed to screens, as in cell phones and computers and video games, until after they're 5. And I was very interested in that because we never had a TV or cell phones when my daughter was young. And I think that's part of the reason that she's as smart as she is that she was engaging and playing and not looking at TV or video games.
Yeah. So that's absolutely true. And, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends no screen time up until 2 years old, followed by very limited screen time. And you see an increased use of screens as almost a third parent or a fourth parent, especially in low income communities. One of the things that concern us about especially high levels of screen time with young children is that to figure out what makes you happy and what your role is in the world and what makes you happy, you need to engage the world and figure out what it is that you're capable of and that you provide and that brings happiness to you. Whereas screens are a very passive activity where it's not you engaging the world, it's a screen engaging you. And so as a parenting tactic, when you're really busy and stressed and in a rush and you just want to keep your kids occupied, you can understand why it's very tempting, especially in low income communities where you have both parents out there working and you just want to keep your kids safe, to leave screens on. They can keep kids occupied for a long period of time, but they don't allow kids to develop their intellectual capacity and their natural ability to engage and give attention to a project, to learn how to improve their skills, improve their engagement, to stick with a project and learn to do it hour after hour, gain skills and abilities, and find happiness through that process of the hard work of figuring out how to engage yourself and make yourself happy, because there's always that shortcut where you can turn something on and stare at it. So the next book that I have that should be published in the next couple of weeks is called Apagalo, or Turn It Off. So it's another wordless book about a family that's having behavior problems due to a huge addiction by all family members to television screens, video games. They ultimately decide to unplug from all of their devices, and their life becomes much better. So it's a great message for families and for parents who are looking for something to, in arguments with their kids, in battles over screens, oftentimes that seeing, even if it's through fictional characters, another family that's just like, hey, we're just getting rid of these things, which is sometimes the only way to detox, because screen use can be an addiction for families. And, I often have patients who, they're like, yeah, my daughter, is depressed, really not leaving the room, not turning the TV off. And I'm like, wait, not leaving the room, not turning the TV off. So there's a TV in the room. Well, did you ever consider not having a TV in a child's bedroom? And it's kind of, once it goes in, it's hard to remove. But this book, there is a very, vivid picture where just literally the TV just gets unplugged and carted away as a message to parents, which you pay for the TV, you still control it. You can remove it if it's becoming a problem for your child.
Oh, that's great. It's a really good message to give to families and children, especially because I'm a firm believer in no TVs in the bedroom. The bedroom is a place to sleep and rest, and TV is not conducive to that. So what other books do you have with you today?
Yeah. So the other wordless books that I think are in kind of a similar theme to Juguemos that I just showed. This one, Almuerzo Lunch, this is a wordless book about a family in the Honduran rainforest doing their normal preparations for the midday meal. So this story was inspired by my own experiences living and working in this community for 2 months. So this is a community in the rainforest. There's no electricity, there's no running water. So they have to fetch water from the river. They go and fish in the morning to get fish for lunch. They collect their plantains from local, trees that they've planted and harvested from, and so it really highlights the diversity of human societies in the different ways that we interact with our environment and that we interact with food. Especially, I felt that telling the story would be very powerful for immigrant parents in the community that I serve, and would encourage children to have interest in how their parents grow up. and inspire parents to become storytellers and teachers to their children. Is that one of the things that I find is that in many immigrant families coming here, there's a sense of that bias, that there's a confusion of assimilation with parenting, which is that this place seems so wealthy and successful, where it's, hey, if my kids just assimilate, they'll be totally fine. And I think that, most of us know that that's actually not the case, that some of the things that, are traditionally are thought of as assimilation, whether it's adopting junk food as a way of eating, adopting television as a way of raising children, is that it's actually associated with negative outcomes as far as achievement. And that, you have wealthier and more educated families that actually try to restrict the level of assimilation into many mainstream American institutions, which make a lot of money and profit for, billionaire corporations, but often at the expense of our mental health and our well-being. And so we really want to empower immigrant parents to use their own instincts and to really teach from their own experiences and to become their children's first teachers and role models. So a story that inspires children about how life is in places that in undeveloped parts of the world, where people have a very strong connection with their local environment, is inspiring for children and for parents as well. On that same note, we also have, like stories that show strong family relationships. And this one, Campo de Gerasoles, Field of Sunflowers, this is another wordless book about a father and a daughter who are in Oaxaca who plant sunflowers together. It shows the life cycle of the sunflower plant, and also shows gardening to be a terrific activity for parents and children to do together. I was a farmer, gardener, landscaper for 7 years. I do it all the time with my kids. And in my community, farming is what people do. So it's a skill set that parents already have. And so it's one that they absolutely should be sharing with their kids. It teaches science, it teaches creativity, it teaches patience. And so seeing a strong example of a father engaging his daughter through teaching her what he knows, which is, the life cycle of plants. And in this story, the birds spread the seeds, and there's a beautiful, wildflower meadow with sunflowers that spreads all over the valley. So that's, that's what happens in that story. The artwork is incredible.
I love that your stories are talking about families doing things together, whether it's making lunch or or going or planting seeds to grow food. It's really wonderful. And I just want to share something. Is when I lived in Mexico, 4 of the months I lived there, I lived with a family who did not have running water. And I think until someone's experienced that, it's really hard to imagine what it's like to live where you have to carry water every day, and how precious that water becomes, and how necessary it is for life of everything, and people and plants. So you can't have a field of sunflowers without water. Yeah. You have to, to help it grow. So, I think of your books as being the water that's needed for growing young minds. So let's look at the rest of your books.
Yeah. So, so beyond the wordless books, I'd say this one, counts as a wordless book. This is Contando, counting. So this book, while it does have, it's a bilingual book, it does have one number and one word per page, and it basically, it's a story of a boy and a girl who are grow up on a ranch, and they kind of wake up, gather their food for breakfast, and they kind of go exploring. They go on an adventure, and each page has a different number of things that are counted. There's a lot of animals for teaching animal sounds, but most of the story is narrated through. It's narrated through the pictures, and so again, this book is highly accessible to parents with a low literacy level. I want to add that these wordless books are not, when I started it, it was all about parents who can't read or speak an indigenous language. But then when I got into it and I started reading them with my own kids, I found that there's something that kids really like about wordless books, is that it puts your child on the same level as you when it comes to narrating the story. And so my kids always wanted me to read wordless books. And it's like, well, what's up with that, right? Like, I read, like, why would they care whether it's a wordless book or not? And what I found is my kids liked it when I'm explaining what's happening in a picture, because that's what they're doing. They're decoding the pictures as I'm reading the words. And so when I decode the pictures, as they decode the pictures, they feel like they have a higher level of engagement and participation, and they can start telling the story without worrying about that they don't know how to read the words. And so my kids found that they liked it. And the more that we read the books, they were telling me the story rather than me telling them the story. Other things that I have are
wow,
healthy.
look at that.
Hey, you wanna come in? You wanna say hi to everyone?
Look,
I know there's a doggy there.
That's Charlie.
Hey,
That's
Ishan,
Charlie. Oh, that looks like your dog.
You wanna say? You
Can
wanna?
we bring this home?
Yes, bring it to mommy.
Carla,
Hey, Carla.
Mama,
I
can
just
we-
made a recipe from this.
Oh,
And
great.
they were talking about how great the book is.
Okay. So you, and this is the one that
Yeah.
we're giving away today.
This is the book that's being given away today. This is Maya Loves Beans. So one of the things I try to do as an author is that I want to use children's books to deliver healthy messages to families. Some of the things that I'm trying to accomplish as my objectives with my young patients and families. So this is Maya Loves Beans. It's an inspiring story about a girl who loves to eat healthy and her family that also loves to eat healthy. And Maya is who we want to be like. It's who we want our kids to be like. She's a strong, confident woman of color, and it's obvious that Maya's confidence comes from the fact that her family has taught her strong cultural tradition. She learns that beans come from Oaxaca, where her family's come. She understands her parents' immigration story. She understands why her family eats differently than many of the other kids at school, but she's really proud of the fact of how her family eats, because she understands that her family eats better, that the reason why that they have stricter food rules in the house is because they have a strong cultural relationship with food and wanting to eat things that are good for them. So parents who are in food battles with their kids, and they kind of kids are like, why can't we eat this, this other, is that sometimes you need an example of someone who you can refer to. It's just like, look, there's a lot of people, there's a reason that we eat, how we do. This book is in English and in Spanish, so it's really great for bilingual families, that you can read both the English and the Spanish, that it's there on the same page. And you see a family that looks a lot like, families in Salinas, in Greenfield, in King City, where you have kind of, large multi-generational homes. And so for people who are growing up in these families, it's good to read books where the families look like you and your family.
That's awesome.
On a note, there's an English and Spanish version of one of my favorite books, which is How Tia Guadalupe Beat Diabetes, Como la Tia Guadalupe Venció a la Diabetes. And this is a book that I use with really all my patients, especially ones that are kind of challenged with their nutrition or their weight or with diabetes itself, starting at the age of 5. And I even give this book to adults. And so this is a story where, there's a young girl, Zanaya, and her aunt, her tia Guadalupe gets diabetes, and she's diagnosed in the doctor's office. And Zanaya takes it upon herself in order to change the way that her family eats. She's concerned for her own health, the health of her parents, and the health of her aunt, and she wants to do something about it. And so she receives wisdom from one of her neighbors, Senor Gonzalez, who's one of these, old school Oaxacans, he's in his 60s. He's still working in the field. He's in, strong, perfect health. He keeps a vegetable garden in his front yard, and he never assimilated his diet. He always continued to eat traditional Oaxacan food, and he really teaches that to Zanaya. He gives her first homegrown tomato, which she loves, and so kind of teaches her the value of freshness and about appreciating food for other qualities other than what comes in highly processed food, which is the salt, sugar, and fat. And so there's this.
Wait a minute, are they eating chapulines in there? Now I've eaten those in Oaxaca.
So they there's a dramatic scene in the book. This is also on the back cover, where they literally pour out the sodas, and they kind of throw away, the chips, the highly processed food that's in their house. And this is what I actually tell my patients to do. Like, it seems like a waste, but if you don't correct your home food environment, you're unable to make a change. Right? Is that self-control? These foods are addictive, and so self-control is always limited in your ability to change eating habits. It comes with changing your home food environment, which means not buying it, not eating it, not having it in your house, and not putting it in your body. And so, when you actually throw the food away that you don't want to eat, it makes you think twice before buying it again. And it's something that really helps people break with addictive habits. So same as how cigarette smokers need to throw out their cigarettes, alcoholics need to get rid of their alcohol in order to break the habit. So that is what I encourage my patients to do. And this story is kind of goes from people nod their head when they're in my office and I tell them to change their eating habits and things don't change. I started giving them this book, and it kind of shows them through a fictional family that looks like them, doing exactly what I would want them to do, leaving my office and then going home to try to fix their eating habits, which is kind of, throwing it away and adopting a not just a little less of this, a little less of that, but really transforming your approach in how you approach food and what it is that you put in your body. So How Tia Guadalupe Beat Diabetes teaches people how to do that. And people reading it have really read it as a family also, that it can't just be one person changing how they eat. It has to be a family unit. So my patients, they come, they use this book, they read it out loud to their whole family. It starts a family discussion on, as a household, how do we want to eat? And it gets people to buy in. So I have a lot of my patients that lose weight and change how they eat, and they find this book very helpful.
That's a really good point, because my understanding is that children actually develop their taste buds at a very young age. And when I was a kid, I hated it that my mom never had soda or chips in the house. We never had junk food, and I hated it. But you know what? My taste buds go towards healthy foods.
Mm-hmm.
I like oatmeal. I don't even like sugar on it. So it's good. So do you have more books?
Yeah, I got a couple more.
Oh, wonderful.
Let's
check
this
these
one's
out.
cute. This is Animal Alphabet Alliterations. It is a cool way to teach kids the alphabet, and I think it's unique. It's pretty funny. So it starts with alligator aims apple at airplane, and B is bear buys big bag of black beans. So as far as I know, no one's ever had an alliteration book that goes more to maybe 2 or 3 of each letter, and animals are really what make the best alphabet books, there. So I kind of started with those concepts. I think my favorite is Quail Questions Quality of Quilt. So we've got one for every letter. This is the book I read most to my kids. Really great way to teach familiarity with the alphabet. And I'm coming out in the next 3 months. I will be coming out with a Spanish edition of this. Obviously, the alliterations don't translate into Spanish. So I just sent the Spanish edition, to the artist. So that should be coming out soon. The very one I believe I want to highlight, which is in English and a Spanish. Which is,
there it is.
Las partes del cuerpo, and the parts of the body. So this was a really cool collaboration with a local artist, Jess Marie Soriano, who's based out of Seaside. So, both of us kind of, locals here in Monterey County, Salinas area. And so I was in the hospital. I was working at Natividad Hospital at the time, which is our county medical center. And there was a patient that came in who was a 7-year-old boy who had an appendicitis. And so, I admitted the patient, and, the surgeon was going to come in the morning and do surgery. And I looked at the family, it was a little bit of profiling, but they looked like, recent immigrants, the Spanish was very limited. And I thought to myself, I wonder if these parents even know what an appendix is. And if the parents are consenting to a surgery to open up their kid's stomach and remove the appendix, and they're being told that the appendix is inflamed and might explode and cause consequences, isn't it, part of being able to, consent to a procedure, kind of meaningful consent, that someone ought to explain to these parents, like, what's going on, like what is happening in the kid's body. And so I asked them if they knew what an appendix was, and they didn't. I did my best to explain it to them, and they were actually very reassured, getting a little bit of background anatomical knowledge that allowed them to understand what was going on with their son. So it made me think about, is there a basic level of anatomy that everyone needs to know in order to meaningfully participate in healthcare decision making? And I think that there is, and that's what inspired me to create this book, Parts of the Body, which I believe is the best anatomy book out there for children ages 4 to 7. I think that every other anatomy book that I've seen, it really starts at 8 and up, and it really, it's like hard to get through them. One time you read part of it, they're a little too sciencey. So this, we keep it very simple. Eyes are for seeing, ears are for hearing, but we do get into what a cell is. why we need to breathe, why we need to eat. So I get into some concepts that I think are actually pretty advanced that most adults don't really know, don't really think about, but I try to keep it simple. Everything that I put in there, I'm like, hey, my children follow this. I've read it to some kids and like, yeah, they can get it on basic level. So the artwork is incredible. Just Marie Soriano is just an incredible artist. Came out real good. I think it's the best thing out there in its class. And we're trying to give it away for free as part of this, free reading program. And then Downtown Book and Sounds for people who want to purchase at retail is the one place to go. We're really happy to provide that book to.
And your books are also available on bookshop.org.
Mhm.
So, and that's a good, and I guess on the big A too, but we're
trying to discourage
we're
people.
trying to discourage people from
at some point I'm going to take them down from there.
Supporting local is definitely the way to go. Wow. So Dr. Josh, I just want to thank you so much for being here today and talking to us about your books. I think this is the best thing that I've seen for children's books. And we really love having your books here in our store. I really want to encourage people to check these books out. I mean, you don't have to be a farm worker family to use them and appreciate them and the messages that they give. So the building strong families also build strong communities. So that's great. Thank you so much for being here today. Do you have anything else you'd like to add at the end?
Yeah, so folks can check out, these books, download them for free, print them, post them. Again, these books are meant to be free and widely distributed. So you can go to justicewithhealth.com. So that there's a double H there, justicewithhealth.com. You can download PDF versions of all of these books, print them, email them to your friends. You can check out also, there's other projects that my nonprofit will be coming out with, videos, health education, that this is kind of part of a larger initiative of how we're going to engage and uplift our farm worker community in Southern Monterey County. So please stay tuned. We have a Gofundme campaign also that's off the website. So anyone that wants to contribute, 100% of the money goes to putting these books in the hands of children at their well child visit, so that doctors will be giving these books out for free, and that the money from the GoFundMe campaign will cut the cost to the clinic in half. So clinics are still going to engage and use their own money because they do want this program, but by cutting the cost in half, it just increases the accessibility to health clinics and will spread this program farther and wider. So thank you all for your support.
And we will put these links in the chat and in the event so that everyone who's watching this right now or who watches it later will have access, that they can just click right through. So thank you again for joining us today, Dr. Josh, and we'll see you next time. Oops, forgot that I am on a non-touch screen.